Welcome to A Million and One Things.
Girls, get it together. You have a show to do.
Because it's cool to know stuff. Let's get started. Welcome to our show, A Million and One Things, because it is cool to know stuff. We are sponsored by Quirky Minds Media, your full-service media production company. Go out to quirkymindsmedia.com to find out what we can do for you. My name is Temple Kenyon, and I'm here today with my beautiful co-host, Cynthia DeBoer, and we have a very special guest with us today, Cynthia.
Yes, we have Dr. Joe Cortese. I want to thank you, Temple, and welcome everyone, and welcome, Joe. We're so happy to have you here with us today. Now, we understand that you've published 2 books, The Missing Link in American Public Education, and today we're going to be discussing your book, Phoenixivity, the art of using positive thinking and positive behavior to manifest and achieve amazing success. To begin, Joe, please tell us a bit about your background, and then we'll get into your book.
Thank you for the introduction. I hail from a little town in northeastern Pennsylvania called Lehighton. It's about 80 miles north of Philadelphia. And if you've ever heard the Billy Joel song Allentown, you know exactly where it is. In that little town, I basically graduated from high school in 1970, so you can do your math. And after that, I decided to go to college, the first person out of my family of 6 siblings to attend college.
Wow, that's impressive.
That is awesome.
It sure was. And what was really odd was there were 3 brothers before me. And since I was the 4th son and named after my father, he expected me to follow the path that my previous 3 siblings had followed, and that was to go in the military. But it was the height of Vietnam.
Ooh.
And I had a lot of friends who went in the military right after they graduated from my high school, and they told me horror stories. And I thought, oh, God, please no. So I graduated with a pretty high GPA in high school, and I studied my buns off because my mother really pushed me to do that. And I decided that I would not go in the military unless I was drafted.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So as a good citizen, I went to college, and President Nixon became president. He decided to phase out the Vietnam War, and he said, we're going to start a lottery system. So instead of being drafted, if your number is pulled, you'll be in the military and you'll go to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
So after about 3 years of student deferments and not getting drafted, I took my physical and went up to the county courthouse in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, and they had this lottery where they had thrown all our birth dates into a fish tank, almost like bingo, and they would pull out numbers, and they had a tote board that would show, this is our quota that we have to meet for our county. So when we reach that quota, we will no longer pull any numbers, and all you that are here are no longer going to be drafted.
Wow.
Oh, man.
That's scary.
It was very scary.
Stressful.
So I'm waiting, and my birthday happens to be July 28th, and it didn't come up, and I'm saying, thank you, God. And they reached 125 in the lottery, and they stopped. They said, we've reached our quota, but we need to have some backups in case some of the gentlemen, and at that time the women were not drafted, it was
Right.
just gentlemen.
Right.
In case some of these gentlemen do not pass the physical completely or are not eligible for some reason, we need to have some backups.
Oh, geez.
So once again, I'm thinking, oh, please. So I was picked as 128.
Okay.
So there were no other changes in the lottery, so I missed Vietnam. And I thank my lucky stars I did.
Yeah, there's some horror stories. I had
Yes.
some friends that went, and it was, yeah.
Yeah, and my father was a World War II vet, and I admire veterans very much. And I've had a lot of friends that were veterans and served in Vietnam, so I know what it's like. So as God would have it, I was not drafted, and I finished my education and wanted to get a job in teaching, but instead of getting into teaching right away, I was asked to become an employee in a sheltered workshop. And a sheltered workshop is basically a working facility that educates and provides employment for mentally handicapped
Okay.
and people that have disabilities.
Okay.
And I had kind of majored in that initially in college. I went to East Stroudsburg University first, and I finished my program of 4 years in 3 years because I went to night school and I went in the summers. I worked in the college library there. I always was a workaholic, and I got that, of course, from my parents.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is I work in the sheltered workshop, and I train these people to do assembly line work, and they assemble lamps, which we sold to the biggest lamp manufacturer in the United States, and it was all metal parts. So it was a very challenging job. So I had majored in English in college and ended up with my minor, special education, working with these adults. And one of the things I learned on one of my first days in that job was don't use the word retarded when you deal with mentally handicapped individuals. Because one of the oldest clients in this facility said to me, you know, you're only in your 20s and you think you're a wise guy and you know everything because you have a college education. But he says, you know, I'm going to tell you why I'm here. He said, because I was labeled as retarded when I was in school, only because I have a speech impediment.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only classification they had for me. So I learned the lesson to never use that word again in my life.
Yeah.
And throughout many years, I did fundraising activities in my home community to help these people
Sure.
to find lodging and that kind of thing. About 6 months after I started that job, I was offered a job in my own high school as a teacher.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And I never thought I'd end up there because I'd interviewed
Sure.
elsewhere. But to end up in your alma mater with people that are your colleagues that you used to call Mr. Smith and Mrs. So-and-so, and now
Yeah.
you're on a first-name basis.
That's
It was
great.
quite a change.
Oh, I'm sure.
One of my mentors, who we'll probably talk about later, was Lou Ginder, and I owe him a lot. He was my first real teacher of teachers that kind of mentored me and showed me the ropes and that kind of thing, and made me feel comfortable in my own environment because he saw that, oh my gosh, how do you call me Lou instead of Mr. Ginder?
Yeah.
See, how do you make that
Yep.
transition?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So after being there for 24 years and teaching English to students who did not want to learn English because they thought they knew it all, I had mostly seniors that were reluctant to learn English,
yeah, sure.
especially if you have to teach them Shakespeare.
Oh,
Why do I
yeah.
need this?
Right.
Right.
I'm going to a tech school and I'm learning how to be an auto mechanic. So you had to really leave the ideal world of teaching as you were taught in college and learn to adapt and make your lessons more user-friendly
Yeah.
to your audience. So after 24 years of doing that, I thought, boy, if I can do this, I can do just about anything, right, in education. Little did I know that I would soon be into administration because the only way to make more money in teaching is to become an administrator.
Right.
Yes, that's for sure.
So I pursued my education, got a master's degree from Lehigh University in secondary curriculum, and I thought, well, I got one master's degree. I don't want to stop learning because there's so much. And at that time, technology was just coming to the forefront. It was like the late 80s and the early 90s. And I heard all about computers and all about Bill Gates and all about the other guys working in their garages trying to make computers. And I thought, boy, I better be ready for this. Because in high school, not only was I a teacher, but I served as a coach in many different things. And I also helped with the journalism in being an advisor to the yearbook and to their newspaper. So I thought, boy, I think newspapers are going to end up going digital and yearbooks. And little did I know that
Wow.
came true
Yeah.
Definitely.
very quickly.
Bingo.
And I had to adapt because no one that was trained in education when I went to college knew anything about computers.
Yeah.
And because I was an academic student, I wasn't allowed to take the business courses like typing.
Oh.
So I had no typing skills,
my
no
gosh.
computer skills, and I had to adapt very quickly. And after I got my first master's, I thought, you know, I can't stop learning because it's demanding, technology is demanding that I stay on top of things.
Constantly changing.
So I started my second master's degree. And I took some courses in technology and media, et cetera, and push came to shove, and I thought, well, why don't I just complete my second master's? So I went into doing that, and at the same time I thought, well, what if I ever want to pursue a doctorate?
Oh, wow.
So I
You
found,
got caught up, didn't
yeah,
you?
I sure did. So there was a suburb named Chester, north of Philadelphia, And they have this unique university called Widener University. And Widener started as a military college. And I heard they had a really good educational program, not that East Stroudsburg University or Lehigh University didn't, but they had a doctorate that I thought would really prepare me for the future. And when I met with my first college advisor, he said to me, you know what, we can take a lot of your courses from your first master's and use them toward your second master's. And if you complete your second master's here, we'll transfer some of your credits into the doctoral program. It'll save you a lot of time, effort, and money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's not cheap.
No, because most doctors can cost anywhere from $10,000 and up.
Right.
Well, it took me almost 8 years to complete my doctorate. And most of that was research on positive behavior, which led into my book.
That's wonderful.
And that, in a nutshell, is an introduction to my bio.
I had read up a little bit on you before you started, and I can see the connections now. And we'll talk about those.
Okay.
But I can see a lot of the connections of what you were talking about in your one book. So
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. One of the things, because I also looked through your book and everything, and we were checking things out, and you had this little interesting story about some changes that took place because of a specific trip. It was a visit to the Cross in Groom Lake, and we're talking 2008. What happened there?
It was at the end of May in 2008. I was a caregiver for my father, who died one day shy of his 93rd birthday. And I did that for almost a year. And that took me from 2007 to 2008. And the promise to myself was I took an early retirement from public school education, which is a whole other story.
Mm-hmm.
I was pursuing my doctorate. I went through a really nasty, prolonged divorce. And I was in a very challenging position in a school district where I started in a night school, and I was also working during the day. So I would be at my school, which was a large school of 3,500 students.
Wow.
I would be in that school from about 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 or 8 at night with hardly any break. The night school was aimed at helping students come back to school that had to quit for various reasons, either for employment or because they were pregnant, or they had to help the family with employment somehow or other, or they had other reasons to quit. Some of them were into drugs, and then they went through rehab. Mm-hmm. But they needed a place to go instead of hanging out in the streets.
Right.
So I provided them an opportunity to come back to night school and graduate. And it was one of the greatest things to see that happen.
That's incredible.
But it was a very stressful job,
I can't
plus completing
imagine.
my doctorate and going through a nasty divorce at the same time. So you call three things converging at one time. Sometimes when it rains, it pours. And my medical doctor at the time saw that my blood pressure was going up, my cholesterol was going up. I was very tense. I wasn't the same person I was when I took that job. Mm-hmm. And she said to me, and thank God I listened, you know, Joe, you have to make a choice. You can always get another job, but you can't get another life. Mm-hmm. And the way you're headed for a nervous breakdown and or a heart attack.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I listened.
Mm-hmm. Good thing.
So I took an early retirement, which kind of blew everybody out of the water in my school district because they didn't expect me to do that.
Sure.
Because I kept a lot of my problems to myself, as a male usually does.
Right.
And I learned about that as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, I took my doctor's advice, and I took an early retirement, and I promised my father, who was coming off the death of my mother, that I would use my remaining days of vacation, which I had never taken, to bring him to California to visit my two brothers in San Diego. And he said, I don't want to go back to California. It's where your mother died. And I said, Dad, you have to get over it. Now listen to those words. You have to get over it, I said to my father. Mm-hmm. Okay. I fly him out to California. We had a great time. We went to a lot of museums, sports included. We saw some games. And, of course, my mother didn't want that when she was alive. And he could just be himself, okay? It was really great taking him to some adventures where he met some World War II veterans.
That's wonderful. I know when my mom died, it was a big thing for my dad to create new memories and to experience things that,
for sure,
not because she was holding him back, but, you know, he was more interested always in
mm-hmm.
letting her do what she wanted to do. And it really gave him a chance to do the things that he had longed to do. But at that point in his life when she was there, she was the most important thing. That was just the way it worked.
Exactly. And, they were married 63 years.
There you go.
So when we were flying back home, because Dad knew that I wanted to move to California. I always loved the West Coast. In my prior life, in my first rodeo, with 2 children and my ex, we did a lot of journeys to the West Coast in the summers when teachers had off, and we explored the West Coast, did a lot of sightseeing, and of course I got the bug for travel, and I liked the West Coast more than the East Coast because I spent most of my life on the East Coast. So I told my dad, I said, when I get you back to Philadelphia, we'll make sure you're okay, and then I'm going to start my life. Because the divorce was finalized, I was now retired, and I thought I'd move to California. And with a resume of 5 pages, I thought I'd find employment really easily. I should have no problem. Okay, so on the flight back to Philadelphia, he had a stroke right next to me on the plane.
Wow.
It was incapacitating, and we almost had to take the plane down, mid-flight.
Yeah.
A doctor on board said he was okay to make it to Philly, but I won't go into all the particulars, but it was not pleasant. And it became very apparent that I was the only single person among my siblings, and they enlisted my help.
Yeah.
And I moved in with my dad because he didn't want to leave the home.
Yeah.
He said, they're going to carry me out of here. I'm not going to the hospital,
I can respect that.
So I took care of him, and he told me a lot of stories about World War II, and none of my other siblings really heard any of this because he never opened up. And, of course, I was now basically not a son anymore.
You
I was more than that.
Yeah, you're more than
Well,
that,
you
but
almost-
it
Right.
changes.
Right.
The roles
change.
reverse.
Okay. Right.
The roles reverse.
So-
We've
for
talked
sure.
about that, yeah.
So when he passed, the family looked to me for helping to close the estate. And I told them once everything was finalized, I would pursue my goal and move to the West Coast. In the meantime, while we were waiting for the sale of the home and dividing up all the possessions that were left, I was looking at online dating, which was just coming to the forefront at that time. Because I thought, how do I find another partner? What do I do? I'm in my 50s. What do I
Sure.
do now?
Yeah.
So I was exploring the online dating, and I found some matches on the West Coast. And one of them said to me, well, when you come west, I want you to stop in Groom, Texas. I said, why? Well, I just came back from a trip there with my church, and it changed my life. And just talking to you and seeing what you've gone through, I think you need to stop there. And it might just be the thing you need to redirect your negativity.
Wow.
And I said, what do you mean my negativity? Well, you're depressed, you're upset, you lost your whole family through the divorce, you're bankrupt, you're going west. Start anew. Look for some saving grace. And she said, to prove that you are listening to me, I want you to go to the gift shop there at the cross, and I want you to buy me such and such.
Oh, how funny.
And then when you get to San Diego, we'll date.
Wow.
Well, there you go.
So I listened. But what an experience. The cross is 190 feet tall, made of stainless steel, and it is the largest cross in the Northern Hemisphere. I went to Amarillo, Texas, and it's about 30 miles from there. At 20 miles away, you can see this cross. It dominates the whole landscape.
Neat.
That's
it gleams
awesome.
in the sunlight.
Wow.
And it just is a magnet. So when I got off at the cross, I, of course, looked at it, and I was just in awe. And I saw that there's stations of the cross all around the base of the cross, and it's molded by hand in copper. So it's very detailed. And then I looked at the cross itself, and there was a replica of the Last Supper in front of the cross. And a little behind the actual cross itself was a rendition of the crucifixion scene with the 2 thieves on either side of Christ. And it just took your breath away. Some things happened at the cross that changed my life. And there was one part of the journey, maybe about 1,000 feet from the base of the cross, where they had an empty tomb, and they had an angel inside the tomb. And I knelt down, and some kind of inspiration hit me that, you have to change your attitude. You have to find a way to be more positive and be the person that you were before the divorce, before your father's death, before the bankruptcy, before you lost your family. Life goes on.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I had this girl waiting for me in San Diego that said, change your life and get rid of the toxicity and the negativity you have, the bitter attitude you have. So it all hit me at one time.
Sure. And
that really changed me. And then about a mile down the road from the cross was a little diner called Blessed Mary's Restaurant.
That's adorable.
Well, of course there was.
Which is another story. Okay.
Well, that's interesting.
So what happened quickly? What happened with the dating when you got there?
Well, when I got
because you kind of owe this person, even if it didn't work out. You owed her a thanks.
It didn't work out.
Well, that's okay. But look why she was put in your life for a reason.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and she knew it, and I knew it.
That's
there
great.
are no coincidences. That's what we always say.
For sure.
Now, amazingly, you are one of the authors that is on this very special program with Temple and I, and it is called 1 Million Books in 100 Days, and you can go there, and it's a .com. You can purchase all of our books, and the really great thing about it, because you've talked about your experiences and being able to, want to give back and all of that, and this program does exactly that. We give $1 of every book to charity, which is really, really incredible. Tell them a little bit more about it, Temple.
Well, the other giving part is to the actual authors, which are all self-published authors, to be part of 1 Million Books in 100 Days. And so we're welcoming you into that family. It's a great group of authors, amazing talent, and so we're very glad to have you as part of that.
I'm honored.
And
thank you.
Yeah, the way James Kelly, who's the mastermind behind it, set it up is that, people buy the book, $1 goes to charity. There's a small fee to cover like processing and everything, and the remainder of the royalty goes back to the author. So you're promoting self-published authors by giving them back a little bit more than maybe some of the other sales venues. Mm-hmm. And Cynthia and I have worked on this program for a while. This is our third campaign's coming up in April. Mm-hmm. And you fill a niche that I think is important, and that's important to James too, so that there's a huge variety. And listening to your story, which I bet we could have like a 2-hour show at least with you, but listening to your story, I understand now how, of course, you had a book in you. And so do you want to just touch quickly? You have 2 books, but there's one that we kind of want to talk about, but you're welcome to mention both books.
Sure.
And I really get now why you wrote that book.
Well, the phoenix is a symbol of change.
Yeah.
And even though it's a myth, just like a rumor, there's some truth to it. And ancient cultures believed in the phoenix as a means of getting out of depressed state, of rebuilding your life, starting over again. So when I was looking for advice on how to navigate a divorce, how to navigate a bankruptcy, losing your family, as a male, I found there wasn't much literature or books written on the male aspect of it.
Probably not.
Because, the
guys
male,
don't share.
Right. Guys aren't supposed to cry.
You're
They're not
tough.
supposed to show feelings.
Yes.
Right. See, one thing you learn through the Phoenix is there's a time to be tough and a time to be gentle.
Right.
And you have to temper both. Mm-hmm. So I discovered the Phoenix, and as I explored the myth behind it, I realized how true it really is. Because a lot of people that are depressed or isolated think, I have to do myself in.
Oh, yes. Believe me, I know all about that.
You get suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
And you think you're no good. You become negative and toxic.
And that inside voice tells you are no good. Yeah.
Right. So as you read about the Phoenix, you learn that you can do it. You can become positive. All you have to do is redeem yourself, look inside, and even if you don't believe in God as such or have spirituality as such, you can think positive thoughts. And if you don't want to read about the myth of the Phoenix and how the early Christians used it to teach the resurrection of Christ, because the Phoenix would resurrect itself.
Yeah.
Correct.
And become a new bird again.
Yes.
So it's almost like rebuilding your life. So if you don't want to get into that, you don't believe in it, there's so many other ways you become more positive, reading positive quotes, etc.
Right.
So I covered all that in my book, and I wanted a book that would be for both sexes, not just for males or females, because I saw that female authors dominated the whole genre of self-help when it came to navigating a divorce and surviving it.
Oh, man. See, you did fill a niche.
Yeah. And I've done so much research, and I read all the other books that I could find, and I referenced them in my book, and I give them credit. But what you need to know is that we're all in the same boat.
Yep.
It took a male and a female to create us, and no one is 100% male or female. So you should never say a man is not entitled to show his feelings.
Right.
I've always hated that because that is why men have heart attacks more often and men do this more often and that. And it's, you know, you don't want to sit there and listen to somebody's boo-hoo story 24/7.
Right.
But at the same time, if something's really getting you down, you have to have an outlet. You have to have a way to express that. I do inspirational type books too, so I totally get where you're coming from. But I do have an idea for another book for you.
Oh, boy. And what might that be?
Okay, well, I know of two men who ended up being caregivers. Now, they were both one was to a very special friend that they looked at as a second mom, and another one was to his mother. Oh. Now, these journeys were very difficult for these men, and I've talked to them, and they're, oh, yeah, well, someday I'll write. But your story about how you handled that, I was kind of put in the same situation with my mom when she passed because my brother and sister were both busy with their lives, and so I ended up being that to a point. And it is very stressful, but it's also very rewarding.
Oh, yes.
And I think anytime, like the book that you're talking about, you're sharing the bad times, but you're also giving us the hint of how it can enrich your life, how it can make you grow. Because like Temple and I said, you definitely go through a total role reversal there.
Oh, yes.
So that might be something to put in your back burner. I don't know.
There
but
you go. Get more books on 1 Million Books in 100
All right.
Days.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I love
Thank
that you talk about a balance because I think that's important. And I know times have changed. I see now how my grandparents handled emotion, how my parents handled emotion, and how my generation handled emotion. And then how, the younger generations handle it.
Right.
And I'm glad that we are a little bit more relaxed in our society, that we can understand that everyone has the function biologically to cry or to yell or to be sad.
Right.
And whatever your venting outlet is, I think that we all are starting to understand that it's a health issue as well.
Right.
And I'll never forget the first time I saw my husband cry. And I was so proud of him simply because he didn't know what else to do with that emotion he was feeling. And it came out and I'm like, there you go. Let it go. And he walked away from the group we were with. He was so embarrassed. I said, don't you be embarrassed if you've got all of that emotion in you. And then you get that perspective. So
right.
I think your book, your life sounds to me a lot like many different rebirths, like the Phoenix. So what a great way to put it all down in a book. And we're so lucky to have you part of the 1 Million Books in 100 Days Challenge. So your other book is The Missing Link in American Public Education. So that one is also out on our 1 Million Books in 100 Days. Any last words that you have that you want to share with our listeners about your book or being part of our crazy challenge?
And then also how to get in touch with you.
Right. Well, the two books are tied together.
Oh, good. Okay.
And it took a long time for me to see the connection because I spent most of my life in the classroom, in education, in different roles. But now that I'm retired and still teaching in different capacities, I know that there is a missing link, and it's one that we don't really want to talk about. It's the family. We're missing too many fathers. Unit. The family unit has been almost destroyed.
Yeah.
And I feel the plight of single parents, male and female, and raising a child, because it takes two parents to raise a child. It's a very difficult job. And as a pseudo-parent, as a teacher, I saw this when I had family conferences. And as a principal, I saw it with conferences and also with when you would suspend a student and get at the real reasons for misbehavior.
Yeah, you
would see it's mostly oriented because it started in the family.
Yeah.
And maybe they lack direction, or they lack a father figure, or they lack a mother. So I started to see that, and it's almost like our country needs a rebirth.
Well, and so we read this book and maybe hear your insights on how maybe we can all learn a lesson from that.
And it doesn't take money to improve education the way it is right now. We need to improve our family structure more than anything.
All right.
And commenting on one thing you made a comment about how things have changed, and now you respected when your husband cried. The first time my father cried was when I ended up on his doorstep, and I told him I was leaving my wife. And I explained divorce to him because he said, your mother and I have been married 63 years, and we've had some hard times. But the greatest generation that fought in World War II and saved our country, they didn't understand the concept of divorce. They just stuck it out.
They stuck it out.
That's right. And that's what,
you
know, those vows that you take, they're for real. And I've unfortunately had to go through a divorce, and it really wasn't a choice of mine either. Right. But I will tell you what, I don't care if it's your quote unquote fault or whatever. If you're involved in it, it literally rips your heart apart. It really does.
And when I explained divorce to my father, it was the first time I saw a tear in his eye.
Aww.
And I said, divorce is a process in which a piece of you dies each and every day.
There you go.
And then he understood it.
There you go.
And I said, Dad, things have changed, and men need to let their feelings out, not keep them in like your generation did.
Yeah.
And he understood that concept. And, of course, that kind of was the beginning of Phoenixivity in my life.
I am so glad, and that's kind of a weird word to use, that you did go through all the experiences you did, because you now share those with everyone through your books. And we really appreciate that you are willing to share those.
Definitely.
And we love having you on.
Thank you.
To tell your story. And we could, like I said, we could probably have 5 shows with you because you have had such a wonderful full life.
Yeah, very blessed.
Thank you. Lots of layers and lots of learning lessons. So, of course, we have your books on 1millionbooksin100days.com. And where else could our listeners get in touch with you to learn more about you?
I can always direct the listener to purchase the books if they don't know how to purchase them, and they can contact me. My email address is probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. It's drjoe, DRJOE 679 @hotmail.com. And I'll be glad to direct you to purchase the book or answer any questions about this interview.
Great.
Or any other questions you have about Phoenixivity or education.
Okay. All right. We appreciate that. Yeah, listeners.
Thank you.
Here's your man. He
There
can
you
help
go.
you with a lot of these interesting concepts and share his knowledge.
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Thanks
being
for
on the
having me.
show. It's
great. And you do have a
fantastic.
great radio voice, just so you
thank
know.
you.
If you
Yes,
need,
you
if you
do.
need another career choice or career
Okay.
path, you
You
know.
know, Quirky Minds Media.
Yeah,
hey,
we
we're
can
I've
always
heard that
here.
many
podcast.
times. Okay. Thank you.
Well, I think that's about all for today. And again, if you want to check out all of our shows, you can visit our website at amillionandonethings.com. Or if you have an idea or a question, if you can't get a hold of Joe right away, just email us and we'll pass it along to him. And that is amillionandonethingsshow@gmail.com. Let us know what you think. Give us a jingle, as they say, and we'll help you out in any way we can. And we'd love to have a show sharing emails and that sort of thing, because as Temple and I say, 1,000,001 things, because it's cool to know stuff. Bye for now. Join us next time when we come up with something new.
After all, there's always 1,000,001 things to talk about.
Girls,